Hello, and welcome to It Matters How We Treat One Another, the social psychology show. I'm your host, Matthew David Vasco. If you've subscribed to this show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform, then thank you. This is a new show, and we are grateful for each and every one of our subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please consider doing so. We're coming up to the end of season 1 of It Matters How We Treat One Another. Season 2 will start in the fall. Our final episode will be coming out in just a couple of weeks and will feature an interview with Dr. Michael Koset on the topic of helping our friends and loved ones navigate grief. This episode focuses on the sometimes challenging topic of accepting others as they are. What's unique about this episode is that we'll be looking at the psychological and social benefits of accepting others from the perspective of the person doing the accepting. I think this topic is often viewed from the perspective of how it helps people when they feel accepted, but there are benefits for the person doing the accepting, and these benefits are not often talked about. So we're going to turn our attention to the topic of accepting others and how it helps us both psychologically and socially. One quick disclaimer before we get too far into this topic. I just want to say that acceptance can be sort of a tricky issue, in that we sort of need to be careful about what we accept in others, right? We would never want to encourage anyone to be accepting of someone who is harming them. So I think generally, as human beings, it's a good motto to say, let's first do no harm to one another. If you're in a relationship and you are being harmed in any way, be it physically or emotionally, then you should probably seek help, um, or try to get out of that relationship. I know it can be painful to talk about this topic, but really, for the sake of this episode, when we're talking about acceptance, we're talking about healthy relationships, right? And just wanting to try to help everybody get along with everybody a little bit better. So I just wanted to say that right up front before we get too far into the episode. Please don't accept harm. Okay, moving on. We open today with our inspiring news segment. If inspiring things are happening in your neck of the woods, then please email me at mdvasco@gmail.com. That's M as in Matthew, D as in David, VASKO @gmail.com, and let me know. This week's inspiring news comes from sparkofgenius.org. The headline reads, Democratic Republic of Congo plants more than 800 million trees between 2019 and 2023. This was a government program initiated to help combat deforestation, and they set a very lofty goal. They set out to plant 1 billion trees by the end of 2023. They learned a lot along the way, all of which is going to help improve reforestation efforts going forward. And what's meaningful about this story is that it shows that when you set a lofty goal, a high goal, something high to reach for, like planting 1 billion trees, billion with a B, even if you fall short of that goal, you've done something really great, right? Like in this case, planting 800 million trees. So pretty fantastic. They were just 200 million trees short of their goal. After all, 1 billion is 1,000 million. And as long as they continue on their quest, they will eventually reach their 1 billion tree goal, which is just wonderful. And it's really going to make a big difference. Something I love about this website that I discovered as I was doing this research is that there is a section called Imagine, and there's a fictional, optimistic headline from the future in that section that reads, quote, "Humanity ends net deforestation and transforms into net reforestation." The full article goes on to say, fulfilling their 2021 pledge, the world's nations begin growing back global forest cover through massive mobilization of conservation and tree planting efforts. The increased tree coverage worldwide proves an immensely potent tool in fighting against climate change and a boon for biodiversity and ecosystem services worldwide. I just thought that was kind of fantastic to see that framed that way. I thought it was a really lovely image, and seeing it written that way makes it seem like, hey, this is actually possible. We could do this, right? We could turn the corner from deforestation to reforestation globally. Again, if you know of inspiring news happening in your area, please let me know at mdvasco@gmail.com. Thanks. And now for our feature segment. This episode, we're taking a look at the topic of the acceptance of others, sometimes referred to as the acceptance of difference. But what's unique is that we're looking specifically at how being accepting of others is good for the person who makes the practice of accepting others as they are. Believe it or not, training ourselves to accept others as they are does have big payoffs for us, the person who is being accepting, both psychologically and socially. It can do things like increase our happiness and overall sense of well-being, amongst other things, which we will get to shortly. First, let's take a look at the opposite of acceptance, which is intolerance or being judgmental. Did you know that being judgmental, intolerant, and generally negative about others can actually serve to compound your unhappiness and possibly even lead to negative health outcomes? It's true. Studies have shown that people who are highly judgmental are generally less happy. And there is evidence to suggest that having a negative attitude about others and maybe being sort of a grump or an angry person can increase your risk of heart disease and even heart attack. So, there is a downside to intolerance and being judgmental besides it just making it harder for you to get along with other people. So, let's say that someone wants to get on the path of greater acceptance of others. Where should that person start? The simple answer to this question is empathy. You've got to flex those empathy muscles. This means metaphorically putting ourselves into the other person's shoes and walking around for a little bit, trying to understand them and get to know them better. With empathy comes greater acceptance. As we learn more about others, we come to better understand their choices and lifestyle. You'd be surprised. Most people really aren't that different from us. We all want a lot of the same things: food, shelter, clothing, comfort, well-being. We all typically want to love and to be loved. And this is interesting, we commonly want to be accepted for who we are. That's right. People tend to seek acceptance. That's where things like conformity come from. And according to sociologist Brene Brown, it's also at the root of perfectionism. We tend to try to be perceived as perfect so that others will accept us. Perfectionism is an acceptance seeking behavior. We fear that we might not be accepted if we simply walk around being our imperfect and unique selves. So we tend to do things like present the best, most flawless version of ourselves and conform to social norms. Even people who might seem really unusual are probably conforming to some social norm for their in group. Think of it this way: punk rockers might look really wild in an office environment where everyone is wearing suits and dressed like that, but at a punk rock concert, they're going to fit right in. Does that make sense? So, people tend to desire acceptance, and we can do better at accepting them if we first set out to simply try to empathize with them and try to understand them. But when do we get to the payoff, right? Well, when we accept others as they are, a few things happen. First, we relax. Our guard goes down, our heart rate decreases, and we feel a greater feeling of well being and comfort. These are all good things, and they have health benefits. Remember how I said that judgmental, angry people have a higher risk of heart disease and heart attack? Well, guess what? People who are empathetic and compassionate toward others and who seek to help others tend to have lower risk of heart disease and heart attack. If you're a fan of this show, then you might remember me talking about these things in our episode on the Helper's High. Here's an interesting thing about acceptance. Like a lot of things, it's a practice, and it takes practice. Before we can accept others, we usually need to accept ourselves. Both of these things are beneficial to us. People who practice self-acceptance usually have higher self-esteem and are more comfortable in social situations. Plus, accepting ourselves helps enable us to be more accepting of others. So, practice self-acceptance. This can be as simple as starting your day with an affirmation, something like, I am enough. Today, I'm going to do my best, and my best is good enough, or something along that line. There is, in American society, a tendency to feel like we are never enough, that we always need to be doing more, being more, and owning more and better things. Being overscheduled, stressed out, and deprived of rest is practically a badge of honor. For example, how many people do you know of who say with pride, I get a full 8 hours of sleep every night and feel well rested every day? Right? Practically no one. But I digress. Practice self-acceptance and self-care. Moving on. Studies show that people who are more accepting of others tend to be more willing to forgive others for their shortcomings, more likely to be described as loving and easygoing, and overall, they are generally happier people. Evidence would suggest that all of these things go hand in hand. If people would be more likely to find you friendly, then they are probably more likely to be friendly with you. And as a result, you are probably going to have more friends, which equates to more social connections. And as human beings, we long for connection. Connectedness is a huge part of overall well being. Brene Brown says it's all about connection, in her words. And Fred Rogers said it's all about love, love or the lack of it. Acceptance of others acts like a grease on the social gears. When we are accepting, people perceive us as being more friendly, loving, and probably more lovable. Let's be honest. People who are constantly judging you and harsh toward you are really hard to love. You're going to get more love by giving more love and acceptance. So there it is. The psychological and social benefits of accepting others as they are. And this goes for accepting all sorts of different people. The more accepting we are, the larger our social network is going to grow. I have a bumper sticker on my car that says, "Everybody needs love and acceptance." It's partly there to remind me to be more accepting. And I'll tell you this, you can be unaccepting of others, but you do so at your own peril because it's damaging to your overall well being. Practice love and acceptance whenever possible. The person who benefits from it will ultimately be you. This brings us to the end of this episode of It Matters How We Treat One Another. And now for the takeaway. Here are your takeaways from this episode. Don't be afraid to set big goals for yourself and strive to achieve them. Even if you fall short, you're probably still achieving something pretty great. Acceptance of others starts with empathy. Make a practice of trying to understand others instead of judging them. 3. It will help us be more accepting of others if we first learn to accept ourselves. Nobody's perfect, and that's okay. Accepting others as they are helps us psychologically by allowing us to feel calmer and more at ease. It also leads to an increased sense of happiness and well-being. Accepting others as they are helps us socially by making us seem friendlier and more loving, which in return makes others friendlier and more loving towards us. Finally, humans long for connection, and accepting others as they are helps us create more connections and stronger connections. Please subscribe to keep up with all of our episodes, and you can support the show by shopping our Etsy store at etsy.com/shop/itmattersmerch. That's It Matters Merch. There's a link in our description. Your quote of the week is, "You are imperfect. You are wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging." That from Brene Brown. And remember, treat everyone with kindness, respect, empathy, and compassion, and try for acceptance and love whenever possible. Be well, and much love to you all. Thanks.